How long have you been a registered nurse?
So I graduated May 4th of 2019, and I
Wow.
started in July. So yeah,
So you're not that long. You've just is a brand new career for you.
this has been like trial by fire, like
Man.
your first year. Yeah, I'm learning a lot. Yeah, it's intense.
How does it compare to your first year out of school as a singer?
Oh my gosh. So I feel like as a singer, you kind of like had an idea of what you needed to do. I feel like
Yeah.
every day I go into work right now, it's just I don't know like what I'm getting into yet. Like we
Yeah.
kind of have I spend like a lot of time looking through the chart, seeing what we need to do next, um, like what we can do for this patient. And yeah, we just it's new every day.
Yeah.
And
I
then,
mean, it is
yeah,
kind of crazy that your first year
yeah.
as a nurse, you have to dip right into the biggest pandemic in modern history.
Oh yeah,
So you are like right at the inflection point
for
of
sure.
history. And that must, you know, what was really interesting to me when I heard about your story, I heard through Matt and Katie in the
Mm,
lyric opera course, and Matt's a good friend of mine for years.
how's it go?
We started hanging out actually in Chicago when I lived there for about 5 years,
Uh-huh.
and Matt and I would hang out all the time. And I think Katie was the one that told me about you and what you've been doing here and with your talents.
Mm.
Like even though you've left the opera world, right? Are you still singing at all?
I do like every now and then, but nothing like that I used to like
Right.
full.
I look at what we do as a community service. If you're not serving through art, the impulse to serve is still there.
Mhm.
And it appears as if you have taken that same impulse and redirected it into a different arena. Can you talk about what made you make this change and and how do you find that your job as a nurse is similar to your job as a performer that was bringing healing in a different way to folks?
So the crazy thing is when I was in nursing school, I didn't think that these two vocations like matched.
Yeah.
And then I had this teacher who constantly was just like, "You have no idea how much you singing is going to come back into nursing." She just kept like I don't know, prophesized basically this idea that I would have a sick patient and I would just sing to them to sort of soothe them. And at the time in nursing school, my first semester, I was just like, "Oh, whatever. This is okay." But it's come up so many times. Me being a singer, connections being made because of music. Whether I had a patient once who was a music reviewer, so we like connected because he loves Copeland so much. I've had a patient who was very anxious and just medicine wasn't really doing it. So this was like a non-pharmacological way to get this patient to just relax. And there are times too, like when words are just not enough, and music just basically is that driving force to.
Now, Katie had told me that the particular unit that you're a part of, you guys deal a lot with the coronavirus and the COVID patients. Is that
Yes.
accurate?
So originally we were a med surg ICU, and we saw a lot of sepsis and respiratory oncology sort of patients. And then once coronavirus started really like becoming big, this would have been early March. It was when we got our first patient, I believe. And that's when we started seeing the change in our unit. And our unit was designated to be the COVID ICU.
Mm.
And so our
You
whole,
guys were at ground zero
oh yeah,
in
we
Chicago.
every day we came in, it was just something different. The CDC would change different rules, and we were just learning as we went. We were never like, people always ask, "Were you scared?" It was never so much a fear of catching it, or um, sometimes it was a thought of, would I be bringing this back home to my friends and family? But it was more just like treating this patient and making
Mm.
sure that they were great. They were doing the best that we can for them. Their families. I think that was kind of the biggest concern too, is that, as a family member, not being able to go in and see your loved one in the hospital, like that's extremely scary. And
I wanted to touch on that because one of the unique properties of this particular affliction is that that with patients who contract it, you have to keep them isolated. You have to keep them away from everybody.
Mhm.
And as a consequence, many of the folks who've received a fatal diagnosis, a terminal diagnosis, they find themselves at the end of their life and unable to connect and reach out to their friends and family. And Katie had said that you were using some of the talents that you learned as an opera singer to help those folks make that transition.
Mhm.
Um, would you mind just describing what that's like and what you're feeling as you're going through this and what you're experiencing as you're helping these folks cross over?
So I had a patient once, this would have been 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was an extreme. Just he declined so quickly through the night. Um, at the beginning of the shift, he was doing pretty okay. We had him sedated. He was intubated just because he wasn't doing well on his own to oxygenate his body, and so we had him on a ventilator. And then we started noticing small things, whether it was his blood pressure was starting to tank. So we started putting medications to help him. And we had him in a matter of an hour or two. He was maxed on 4 different medications to increase his blood pressure, and he still wasn't making the minimum that we want. And it just went down from there. And I talked to his daughter at the beginning of the shift, and the conversation was so different than at the end. It was more, he's doing okay, he's sustaining, and then he just started to plummet. And I just couldn't imagine as a family member not getting these updates as time goes, because we're so concerned with this patient that we honestly just do not have the time to go and to call them because we're so focused on this patient. Like, we had so many nurses on my floor, doctors there, just trying to figure out what's going on, what can we do to help this patient. And eventually we had to call them and tell them that this patient wasn't going to make it. And I just remember that there were times that I just, like I said, like, there are things I try to do. I try to talk to the patient even though they're sedated, to let them know that I'm there, that I'm helping them. But when all else fails, like, I just started singing Negro spirituals. I just feel like those songs transcend, like, into your soul. Like, and so I sang Deep River to this patient, and you could tell that it was affecting him, and you could tell that he heard me. And a lot of times as a nurse, it's hard to really convey to families that when we leave from our shift, like, we're not done. Like, I'm still thinking about this patient weeks after the fact, and how they're feeling. And it's hard. And this virus it's unmatched. I've never, through this past year, I've seen a lot of different diseases, um, different outcomes for people, but this is just, it's wrecking, to be honest, Michael. It really hurts you. So I think I lost your volume there, Michael.
I got it. I was muted because I didn't want to be sniffling and snuffling on this
Yeah,
through your story.
I get it.
It must be difficult when you sign up for something so like sign up to be a nurse.
Mhm.
You pick this profession. You've done opera for most of your adult life, and then you switch to this other career, nursing, where you can put that impulse to serve to a different use. And you must have thought, well, I will be helping people all the time, and I'll be saving lives all the time, and this will be great.
Mhm.
And then to arrive and to have it for your constant companion, death,
Mhm.
every day. You must encounter this every day.
It has multiplied a lot more than we've seen it before. But there are patients, you know, like once you get to the ICU, it's really scary once you're in the ICU, once you're at that level of care. But we seldomly we are seeing some patients that are getting better. We had a patient just this week. I had him for 3 shifts, and he was the sickest patient for the longest time on our unit. You know, there everything about this patient, if you looked at their labs, if you looked at their stats, it you did not think that he was going to live. And just one day, it was a miracle that this guy just started improving, and we were able to extubate him. He was talking to me by the end of the night. His wife was just like ecstatic. She was so scared to just let him go off of Zoom that we just let her stay on the iPad all night, like talking to him, because
Goodness gracious.
she didn't think that he was going to come home. And you know, we just downgraded him to a med surg unit a couple days ago, so things are looking a lot better for him. But he's a long way to go as far as rehab. But you know, he's looking a lot better. You know, it's insane because this disease, we're seeing it with families. You know, I've had a patient whose brother was on the unit, whose wife was on another unit, all because of coronavirus. And you know, some families, they don't get to have these great outcomes and great stories. I was just reading an article the other day that a mother had eight deaths in her family from coronavirus. And
It's so much, it's so funny that in the opera world, I do a lot of stories about war,
mhm,
tell a lot of war stories. And it's so similar, some of the narratives that you discover now when you're talking about this virus. And, you know, we are fighting a war right now. The difference is, you didn't sign up to be in a war. You signed up to be a nurse.
mhm,
But now all of our warriors are our nurses and
mhm.
our doctors and our janitors and our custodians and our secretaries that are sitting at the desk every day, and the grocery store clerks and the delivery men and the sales. Everybody that has to come to a hospital now, they've signed up to be in a war, and you're on the front lines of it, man.
Yes.
And gosh, I just, it's incredibly humbling just to talk to you and to hear about your experience, and to know that you have taken that, all that you've learned in your life, and you've, instead of just saying, this is what I think it's important for people in our industry to understand, that this new reality that we all live in, there'll be a lot of folks who are
Mhm.
singer slash director, singer slash chorister, singer slash barista, bartender, everything else. And you've taken that designation and taken the best of both worlds and combined them together in order to give people some peace. And, you know, talking, I spend every day, all day long, talking to people about this, about the future of our industry, about how can we, how can we make sure that our art form is viable in the future, and what are we going to do when this is all over, and how can we come back, and all this stuff. And we're all thinking about, what are we going to do in a year, what are we going to do in 6 months, but Dominic, you're right there. And this is not something that you can even cast your mind forward 6 months, is it? You got
No.
to focus on the thing that's right in front of you.
Mhm.
The house is on fire and you're a fireman. And a lot of folks are out there talking about, how are we going to build a new house before the fire's even out?
Mhm.
And I wonder if you could just maybe speak to that, because I think that it's important that we remember that there are folks right now who don't have the luxury of staying inside and isolating themselves, and staying away from the scary stuff, and staying off the news, and staying off of Facebook, and staying off, completely isolated from the world. And I'm in my happy little bubble.
Mhm.
When you folks, you don't get that choice.
Yeah.
You have to go out there and show up every single day.
Mhm.
And so could you just talk about that, and let me, and just so we can all understand that, one of our own in our industries out there fighting, for all of us today.
Mhm.
And I want you to sort of, can you speak to us in the opera industry, and speak to us and your colleagues, and talk to them about, about that
Mhm.
particular component of this experience?
I've been in that life where, just this past Easter season, that's such a big week for a musician. And, I think about churches being closed and, you know, a lot of our music jobs are being canceled and postponed and just done for a while. But I think social distancing is just so important. But I think at the same time, as a musician, we've been so creative in figuring out how to connect to each other. Um, I just saw on CNN, a friend of mine was able to do the finale of Marriage of Figaro with a few of his friends, like on Zoom. Like, whoa! Um, but I think the best course of action is social distancing, and doing your part in that. And I know it's hard. I get out of the house at least 3 nights just to work, but I couldn't imagine 7 nights at home. And for some people, that could be so isolating. But I mean, at least we have the internet. Think about if we did this 10 years ago. Could you imagine not having capabilities of Zoom or?
Man, when I talk about this a lot with my older colleagues, and I ask them, how the hell did you do it when you just had a rotary friggin' phone
Yeah.
to keep in contact with people? You can't see them. I mean, I'm on the road 11 months a year, but and I don't get to, without technology, I think I'd have gone crazy. Not to see my wife, not to see my mom and dad for 11 months. It's
We're
nuts.
such social people too. Like, I just remember doing shows and just feeling like family and, just the touch of people. Like, and I don't know, I feel like for a lot of people, this is probably one of the hardest things to do is to stay at home and
Yeah.
um, not be out. But it's the best thing that we can do, Michael.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, man, uh, for you as somebody, and I mean, it speaks to the character who you are as a person. And for you to when I asked the question about this, and for you to immediately show compassion for your artist friends, and not to, I mean, for me, I was like, hey, let's let's show Dominic some compassion for what he's doing here. And your first impulse is to show us compassion. I think that speaks to who you are, man. And that's that same spirit that made you give so much to us in our industry. And it's obvious that spirit has continued on into your new chosen career. And on behalf of the entire opera world and the entire community of Chicago, of which I used to be a part, I want to thank you for putting your life on the line for us, and helping these people who have to face that transition alone, giving them this sense of peace with one of the most, I can't imagine a more perfect spiritual and deep river for that transition. And I'm not going to ask you to sing it, but I just this is one of the most inspiring stories I've heard in a long time. And I hope that everyone gets a chance to hear your story. And I hope that if I ever find myself in a position where I am facing that choice, facing that journey, facing that crossing, that I have somebody with as much compassion and with much goodness and kindness in their heart standing at my bedside.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah. Dominic, I want to thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And be safe out there, brother. And if there's anything that this industry can do for you and for your patients, you let me know and we'll get the word out, and we'll make sure that anything you need, we'll make sure you got, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.